over 90% of lawyers. Most lawyers just kind of hold their territorial license by province.
Do I need to be scared about that I sent you an email before I actually got the property under contract?
Yeah, no, I mean, for us, it's all about relationships. In Ontario, we use a land registry system that is electronic based. Right now, with COVID and everything being, remote, we've been actually just basically setting up and giving everybody our wire instructions.
What's a reasonable timeline for closing?
Normally, I would recommend no fewer than 7 business days. 2 weeks is your kind of your safe range. But can they close quicker than that? It's possible.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about real estate law with a real estate lawyer. Ryan from Carson Law was good enough to sit down with me and really just answer all of your frequently asked questions. So if you're not following me on Instagram, you missed out for some free legal advice, because on Instagram I solicited if you guys have any legal questions related to real estate investing, hit us up and myself and Ryan will discuss it in a future video. Well, that video is here today, and I think it's filled with just fire information. This is the sort of stuff I wish I had when I was first starting out as an investor, because a lot of us, we just struggle in obscurity and we get caught up wondering about the unknown unknowns, rather than say sitting down with a real estate lawyer, picking their brain for half an hour and really just fleshing out how does this all work, and really what's the difference between, say, buying a residential property for yourself to live in as a principal residence versus, say, a rental property that's going to be used for investment purposes. And again, I really appreciate Ryan from Carson Law just taking the time to answer your questions and my questions in regards to real estate law here in Canada. Otherwise, let's just dive into it.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and I'm really excited for today's video because I'm joined by Ryan from Carson Law. Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Hey, thanks, Matt, and hello, YouTube Nation. It's great to be on with Matt and help you guys out with some content.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us, because we actually put out a series of questions to my audience just to find out, what do they want to know about a real estate lawyer, or what's involved with, a real estate lawyer. And I found there was a lot of actual confusion around really why people use a lawyer in Canada for real estate transactions and exactly what that looks like. So I'd love to first, before we get into the actual Q&A answers that the audience had, do you mind just kind of breaking down for us, what does a typical real estate transaction look like in Canada, and what point does like a lawyer get involved?
Yeah, no, great question. I'm happy to provide some insight there. So first of all, most lawyers are licensed by province. So that's kind of the first thing to know, is lawyers are typically, at least in Canada, all licensed by province. I hold an Ontario license only. So for example, if somebody wanted to do a transaction in Alberta and they were working with me for many, many years, I would have to make sure we had an Albertan lawyer, somebody licensed in Alberta, on with us as well, because I can't give the legal advice, nor could I register the Albertan deal because I'm only in Ontario. And I would say that probably is over 90% of lawyers. Most lawyers just kind of hold their territorial license by province. There are several lawyers typically in some of the larger firms that will have cross province or cross border. Like lots of people in the southern part of Ontario would either have potentially a New York license or sometimes a Michigan license because of the cross border cities, but most of the time all of us are licensed just in one province or one territory and location. So that's kind of the first thing to know. I mean, the second thing to know about lawyers and specifically real estate lawyers, we try to be the quarterbacks on the deal. There's kind of different little elements that happen with the deal. There's title searching, there's dealing with the banks if there's financing involved. There's dealing with like the tax departments for municipal property taxes. There can be other off-title searches that happen with the municipalities as well, like work orders, permits of zoning, those sorts of things. So really the lawyer's job, if you like a sports analogy, is to be a bit of a quarterback, with all the different pieces that have to happen in the real estate transaction. We typically work on, providing the legal advice and the content that goes with the deal. And typically paralegals or our assistants or clerks will work more on the processing of the actual paperwork under our supervision, of course, as the quarterback. But we're not typically doing a lot of the paper pushing.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing more of the supervisory work of the paper's content, directing the traffic on what kinds of documents need to be there. And then we typically have the paralegals or the clerks kind of drive the paper under our supervision, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So if I'm a new investor, I'm in Ontario, Canada, I'm thinking about buying a deal, a property, probably a multifamily property. Mm-hmm. At what point in time do I need to start thinking about a lawyer? Or what point in time do I need to get a lawyer involved, in your opinion, based upon your experience? Like, is that before I start shopping? Is it once I've got a deal under contract? Probably not the day before closing.
Yeah, exactly. Not one day before, hopefully sooner than that. Although that happens. That being said, I think the earlier the better. What I see in almost 80 to 90% of the cases is we're not really involved until they've already gone through the process of like shopping with a realtor and processing their loan approval and banking. So we're kind of the last of the triumvirate, if you would, mm-hmm. with the realtor, the mortgage broker, insurance rep, and then lawyer, right? Like we're the closer, again, for a sports analogy. We're closing up the deal. But because our role is so crucial to everything finishing and closing, if you will, I think it's great to establish a nice working relationship with a real estate lawyer ahead of time, especially, if you're talking about investors. You should really have that real estate lawyer handy right away at the beginning to say, hey, Ryan, just so you know, this is what I'm looking at. These are the next couple of deals that I want to try to get under my portfolio, my investment structure, and anything I should know from your end, before I even go out and hit the market. I like to work with our clients all along the way, so I don't mind people calling or emailing me, ahead of time to ask questions about things, let me know where they are in the process. That way, if there is something that's very unique about the deal, because as you know, as a experienced real estate investor, every deal is its own can of worms. Mm-hmm. And you can have general principles and guidelines, which is fantastic. But every deal does have its own, warts, and sometimes you have to kind of look at that just case by case. It's really hard to do it outside of that. So the earlier the better, because really the only thing none of us can ever get back is time, Mm-hmm. So the sooner we're brought in, even if it's just like, hey, heads up, this is what I'm going to be doing, the better, in my point of view. Yeah. Because then we have more time. We're maximizing as much time as we possibly can to hopefully help the client make an informed decision and not make a mistake or whatever the case is, right? So that would be my thought, is sooner the better. I know, the majority of the time people get experienced or they're inexperienced and they don't know any different, and we don't get stuff until the very end, and that's okay too. We're gonna work with it as best we can, but the sooner the better. Even if it's just something very informal, very quick, we're happy with that.
So Ryan, I think one of the reasons a lot of people don't involve a real estate lawyer sooner in the process is a lot of people have this preconceived notion about lawyers. The moment I send an email or start a conversation, the time starts ticking. I'm being billed by the second, and now I'm going to owe hundreds of dollars I didn't realize. Do you mind breaking down? And I know every real estate transaction and lawyer is different, but based upon your experience in your firm, what does a typical real estate transaction look like in regards to fees, or how does that all work?
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. So at our firm specifically, and I think most of the real estate industry is like this, at least in Ontario. The lawyers actually charge at a flat fee, or they call it a block service fee. So for a list of enumerated services, you would get charged whatever set fee is. So let's say, for $500 plus disbursements and HST, we will do A through Z for you on this purchase, right? Specifically with our firm, we do set up a fairly detailed retainer agreement, which we have every client sign as part of our file opening process. So when we welcome the client to the firm with an opening email, there's some opening documents attached. One of them that they need to get back to us before we'll proceed with further work is a retainer agreement. And it sets out that enumerated list to say A through Z, this is all the work that we're going to do for you. And for that, the fee is whatever it happens to be, $450, $650, $850, $1050, whatever it happens to be, plus disbursements and HST. There will be a section within the retainer agreement that does have the client acknowledge that if we have to do something that's outside of this list, which would be something that falls well outside the norm of whatever the purchase is, for example, then there would be a fee at the hourly rate for that work.
Gotcha.
But 9 times out of 10, I would say over 90% of the cases, we're doing work that is all within that retainer. Things that trigger like extra costs on our end would be something like extensions or like last minute negotiations or revisions, last minute changes to financing. So all of a sudden we're doing like a second mortgage and we weren't supposed to have it in the first place. Things like that. Probably very rarely would there be like additional research or something that would be required for a deal, but those are the things that might potentially cause a bit of an uptake in the fee. But otherwise, it's all a block fee, which is nice. It creates confidence and clarity, hopefully, for the client that they know, okay, this is what I can expect my account to look like.
Yeah. And
a lot of people get leery of the, but what? So legal fee is like $450 plus disbursements. So what's that, right? So what we try to do if clients, ask and they want it, we will give them a detailed account estimate as well with all of it. So fees, disbursements, HST, this is what it's going to look like more or less at
Gotcha.
So if somebody's really cost sensitive, really trying to budget, then or just wants to know that information ahead of time, then we have those already precedent up that we can send to the client based on the particular retainer. So we try to do everything all as a block fee. I think that's an industry norm. So certainly with our law firm, if people were shy about engaging with us earlier because they're worried, I'm going to get billed, $500 for these phone calls and emails, and I really don't want to have that happen. I'll just not do the phone call. We don't want you to do that. We want you to call us. We want to build that relationship. That's the most important part to us, and the client's not going to get dinged for that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I appreciate the clarity. So when we're talking about what a real estate lawyer does in regards to the transaction, I know earlier in the video, you kind of touched upon a lot of different things. Do you mind maybe just elaborating a bit more? Title insurance. That's something that I find a lot of people get confused about, as well as like surveys. And then oftentimes people have heard some terminology from the US that I think also compounds their confusion. So here in Ontario, Canada specifically, what's a real estate lawyer doing? And I guess actually maybe one step before that, is a real estate lawyer always used related to transactions with real estate in Ontario?
Yeah, no, thanks, Matt, for that. Those are some great points and questions to give clarity to. First of all, if you are comparing Canada and specifically Ontario to the US and any transaction you've done in the US, very different. Most of the US states that I'm familiar with use title insurance companies and notaries to close all of their real estate transactions. And their system of registration is quite a bit different too. So if you're trying to do comparisons or build off your US, extensive US experience to compare to Ontario and Canada, you're not going to see that many similarities probably. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Even province to province, a lot of our provinces are quite a bit different. Ontario, we use a land registry system that is electronic based. 99% or more of all registrations will be in land titles system now, which is the electronic system. Very few are paper in-person registrations, which is the old registry system. So the province is almost fully converted. There's only a very, very small pocket of properties that would fall in registry anymore. So that's number one. Everything we do is electronic through like an encrypted web-based system. Lawyers have access codes and user information so that only they're able to get in and keeps the system safe and secure from fraud as much as possible, right? But what it means is we're able to do all of our processing right from our office. We don't actually have to go into the land registry office in 90% of the cases anymore to do registrations and title searches and so forth. So that's just general overview, specifically kind of like what does the lawyer do throughout the process that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll just use an example. Let's say you have a deal you want to use us. We would say, okay, hey, Matt, send us over the agreement of purchase and sale. You email it over to me. In the future, we're actually developing a portal system. So you'll do a secure portal soon. But right now it's an email. So you email to us. And then we review that. We start the file opening process. You get that welcoming email. And then what happens then is you fill in information forms and ID and give us ID and the retainer. Once we've got all that, what ends up happening on our end is we'll start going through our process to make sure we've got all the contacts for your mortgage that you're going to be having for the purchase. We'll make sure we have all your contacts for the home insurance so we know who's going to be insuring the property and the mortgage lender's interest in the property. And then if there's a condo management company, because it's a condo, we'd have that kind of stuff on our plate. We do the title search to the property. So through that electronic system I spoke about before, we will pull a title, we will review the title. We then, after we send out requisitions to the seller's lawyer for what we found on title, we'll report back to the client as well with an update and a summary of what their title is going to look like for when the closing does happen. So we'll point out if there's like easements or rights of way, if at all. We'll sometimes, with properties like adjoining townhouses or semis, there's shared points on the property between your neighbors. So we'll point that kind of thing out. And basically anything on title that would potentially need to be disclosed to the future homeowner for their use, enjoyment, refinance, or sell the property.
Gotcha.
They get that in a title acknowledgement document.
And so when we're talking about title, just so that in case anyone's kind of new to this, title really is, like you were saying, it's kind of a government record of anyone that has claims or anything related specific to the property that could impact our use or enjoyment of it.
Do you want to get control of your financial life? Do you want to crush it in real estate with wholesaling? Do you want to join my full-time team of wholesalers like Mike or Shahir? Or what about Tyler or Diego? Or what about Amar? All right, and what do we do, boys?
We make offers, we buy fast, never gonna miss a deal cause we pay cash. Offers, 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 deals, deals, deals. Tell us, Mr. Seller, what price do you feel? Cause we're Southwestern's biggest source of deals. Boom!
So if you guys want to crush it with wholesaling, you need to join my team. And down below, video description, there's all the links you need.
And so when we're talking about title, just so that in case anyone's kind of new to this, title really is, like you were saying, it's kind of a government record of anyone that has claims or anything related specific to the property that could impact our use or enjoyment of it.
Yeah, exactly right. So the land registry office that I mentioned briefly earlier, that is the government's provincial body for keeping all these records for what's on 123 Smith Street.
Gotcha.
Right? Now, keep in mind, and this is what you raised, title has things like mortgages, liens with like CRA, or if somebody had construction debts they didn't pay, easements, which is a temporary right of a third party to have access to the property for a specific purpose. A right of way is just kind of like what it sounds. Somebody has access to use a portion of the property for access. So those sorts of things will be registered, but lots of times people ask us like, oh, well, what about the permits, or, you know, what about zoning, or what about work orders, or what about, you know, what about surveys? Where are all these things, right? Unfortunately, none of those are registered with the land registry system. So those are all things that would have to be independently searched. In a single family residential purchase, at least in Ontario, because of title insurance insuring fraud and other items, with a single family residential purchase, we don't actually need to do those off title searches if you don't want us to. I mean, there'd be a cost from the municipality to get them, and B, we would have a bit of a cost to order them and review them, because title insurance will cover issues surrounding those searches, right? So if you bought a house again and you wanted to gut the basement and you needed a permit to do it, you go to the city, apply for the permit. They say, oh, well, before we issue your permit, you have to satisfy all these other outstanding permits from the previous owner. Well, you'd let us know that. We would create a claim with your title insurer. Title insurance then pays to get rid of those old outstanding permits, and then you get your new permit and you proceed. And there's no cost. Title insurance is a one-time fee. It's built into your account, and it's all part of our service. So there wouldn't be any cost to you, the new homeowner, for that title insurance claim, right? But yeah, so we would do those kinds of coordinations with the mortgage broker, the home insurance provider. We do the title search with the registered land registry office. As a default on any kind of purchase, as an example. The off title searches we could do as well, which is with the local municipality, but those are more of a one-off, depending on if it's what kind of purchase it is and what kind of property and the desire of the client. We give notifications at registration. So when we actually register the deed on the closing date, we would give notifications to all the necessary property tax authorities that this is the new owner. We typically do a communication to the real estate office to let them know the deals are closed. Sometimes commissions, there's money to be refunded to the buyers or the sellers. So we just let everybody know that the deal is closed. Like we do the exchange of money and keys and deliver those to the clients. Yeah, there's probably quite a few other things too, but that gives you an idea of there's quite a few things that are happening behind the scene that we're working on. I mean, we try to make the process very simple. I always say to Chad, you know, buying a house, everybody thinks it's like buying a pair of jeans. It's so simple. It's no big deal. You just go in and get it, and everybody should be able to do it. And I think that's a testament to how industry professionals, lawyers, realtors, just, you know, mortgage reps, everybody's made the process hopefully as easy and as streamlined as possible, but there's really a lot to it, which gets lost in this, I think, from time to time, because it is simplified so much.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then let's just talk about kind of that financial reconciliation at the end. So the statement of adjustment. So the lawyer's really going to help, you know, coordinate and determine, you know, if, let's say, we close in the middle of the month and someone's already paid partial property taxes and things of that nature, right?
Yeah. So what happens for the closing date? Let's say we had a closing date of May 22nd today, and you're again the purchaser. So the seller's lawyer has to get the tax certificate and provide us a copy of that. We determine if there's any adjustment that needs to be made because there's been an over and under payment by the seller for property taxes. Typically, we insist on there always being paid exactly up to date or overpayment. That way, the buyer doesn't walk into arrears on their tax bill or anything. But so what happens is the statement of adjustments will show purchase price, deposit being credited. The deposit is typically held entirely by the realtors involved in the transaction. So it's in their trust account at their office, typically, unless it's a private deal, in which case usually the seller's lawyer holds on to the deposit. But the deposit will be, you know, credit to the buyer on the purchase price, and then there'll typically be that credit for the seller on overpayment of property tax, and then you'll have a net balance due. And so once we then take that net balance and factor in any of the land transfer tax and registration fees that are applicable in our account, we give the buyer a gross number, and then we subtract from that the mortgage amount that will be advanced, leaving any sort of balance that might be needed to be paid by the buyer as our client.
Yeah.
And basically, we try to have this appointment with the client typically 2 to 3 business days ahead of the closing date. That way, there's lots of time to ask questions. There's lots of time to sort out the financing, move the money to our account. Normally, we could accept anything, like we could accept a wire, we could accept a bank draft, a certified check from the client. Right now, with COVID and everything being, remote, we've been actually just basically setting up and giving everybody our wire instructions. It's quicker and easier for them. They just call the bank up, say, hey, just do a wire. Here's the form. Here's the amount, and then they wire it. And then everybody's contactless or in isolation as much as possible.
Makes sense. That's awesome. Let's talk about timelines. So, what's a reasonable timeline for closing? Because I often come across new investors that don't understand that there's kind of a sequence of events that have to play out. And so, I can say that I close fast, but I probably can't actually submit and sign an offer that's going to close tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would be super fast. To be honest, if you were doing a cash deal, if you already had the money arranged ahead of time and you didn't need to do the financing contemporaneous with the registration of the purchase closing, you probably could do a deal in one day, because it's just signing some paperwork with your lawyer. I mean, we could, pull a title search and review it. I mean, everything would be a little bit compressed and rushed. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you did have the cash available already, it could be a possibility. Normally, I would recommend no fewer than 7 business days. I think 7 to 10 business days. 2 weeks is your kind of your safe range. Obviously, we like to see stuff probably more like 30 days out. But it just everything all depends. Deals come together when they come together. And we just try to do our best to obviously set reasonable expectations and timelines with the clients, so that I think if people know ahead of time, like, oh, look, this is going to be really tight, and you give them that expectation and timeline, then it's harder for them to say, well, I'm disappointed, right? Or I didn't think that was going to be the case. If you say, oh yeah, one day, no problem, and then, well, one day is a problem, well, of course, they're naturally going to be a bit frustrated, right? But yeah, I would say timeline, typically we get deals 30 days out, typically no shorter on a purchase or sale, like 10 to 14 days, kind of as your rush. But, can they close quicker than that? It's possible. It's kind of deal by deal. We normally would recommend having mortgage instructions to us at least like agreement of purchase sale, preferably 30 days out. Mortgage instructions, home insurance arranged maybe 2 weeks out, 10 days to 14 days out. Make sure we have all our documentation that we send you in the file opening email back within about 48 hours of you receiving it, and then have that meeting for signing and everything 2 to 3 business days from closing. So if all those things are happening, then you shouldn't have a problem with the process. But there's obviously a lot of stuff that happens all in between all those bits that can sometimes create a problem.
Absolutely. There's a lot of moving parts to any real estate transaction.
Hey, everybody. Ryan Carson here from Carson Law Office. Pleasure to be on Matt McKeever's YouTube session. And a little bit about me and about the firm. I've been practicing since 2008 and have a couple degrees, and Really started my career with mostly real estate law, corporate law, wills and estates, and that's where my practice has kind of stayed to date. We also offer landlord tenant, small claims, and intellectual property law like patents, trademarks, and copyright at the office. But before I opened up Carson Law, which has been in existence for about 8 years, I spent the first 6 years practicing as an associate and running their real estate and corporate divisions, and took that basically from about a billings of about just under 200,000 a year to about 750 to 850,000 when I left. And then now basically at Carson Law, we do about we're getting close to the 2 million mark in billings in a year, which is predominantly myself as the main lawyer, and then we do have one other main lawyer and then a couple associates. Carson Law, as I said, works in the areas of real estate, corporate, wills, estates, intellectual property, and now we're proud to say landlord, tenant, and small claims and provincial offenses. And we're just launching that service in the coming days. My approach to practice is, it's about balance. We want to have strong relationships with not only our clients, but with each other in the office. So we're a very approachable and friendly firm. I've mentioned in some of my videos with Matt that we offer, 30-second consultations, typically at no cost. We're happy to answer your phone calls and to get your emails. We're not, going to dock it every minute and send you a bill for every minute of discussion. It's all part of building a relationship that we want to have long term with you, and we want you to feel comfortable to always think of Carson Law as the firm to go to when you have a question. We might not always be the ones that can help you, and if we can't, we'll make sure that we get you sourced out to a very competent specialist in that area. But we want you to feel as though you can come see us, you can approach us. As you can see, I'm wearing the t-shirt and the baseball cap today, practicing my social distancing and my COVID quarantine. But we're people. We're not just a suit. And we've got family, and we've got lives outside of practicing law, and we try to keep that balance. We try to work hard for our clients. We try to make sure that the client's needs are put first, and we use a team approach. And that's a little bit different than maybe some of the traditional models that a lot of law firms use. It's typically lawyer kind of being fairly dictator to their support staff, and they just pump out material. We try to be a team-based approach where we would through a process that we've developed over, like I said, almost 15 years of practice. We try to make sure there's team members helping you along the way, from start to finish, from a file opening. Using the team approach, it allows us to make sure you have constant access to somebody at the office, whether it's email or phone call. So you don't have a lot of time where you can't get access or answers to your questions, because we know in this day and age, especially, people want to have answers at their fingertips. And so our team-based approach helps, in our opinion, foster a really nice family feel, approachable feel, and it allows us to work well with our clients who are largely individual people, family members, small to medium-sized businesses. That's kind of our bread and butter. That's who we like to work with. And we work a lot with real estate investors. And so it's been great to share specific content with Matt so far. And it's been a real delight to just speak to you generally about who we are, who I am, and what we're all about, which is taking care of you guys and helping you guys with your home, with your work, with your life needs. And we're here for you. And whenever you need to think of a lawyer, or you have a question that you think is legal, think of Carson Law, and hopefully we'll be the ones that give you the answer. Otherwise, we'll certainly do our best to get you placed with somebody who can get you that answer. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks again to Ryan for taking the time to shoot this video. I really appreciate him sharing his experience and wisdom with us, as well as answering your questions about real estate investing and the legal consequences and how the entire process works. If you still have questions around real estate investing and kind of the legal impacts, hit us up in the comment section, because we're going to turn this into a reoccurring series with Ryan, because I know this is going to help out a lot of investors across Canada. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. If you'd like more great real estate investing content, check out this playlist with Casey Wong right here, or check out this other great playlist on real estate investing as well. And until next time, remember, making money is a team sport. There's more than enough money in this world for us to all make it, but if you're not saving it, I mean, like, what's the point? Thanks, guys.